to week 2. I'm Nanette Ruddick.
I'm Brendan Bunyan. How are you?
Hello, North Queensland. Hope you've had a great week. We've got some exciting stuff to talk about today, and certainly 2 wonderful people to come on board to be interviewed. We've got Jayne Arlett, a small to medium business consultant, who's going to share some ideas and strategies around how we can get through COVID-19 in terms of recovery. And we've also got Nick Dametto, Member of Parliament for Hinchinbrook. So without any further ado, let's bring on board Jayne. Admit Jayne to our live show.
What did you get up to this weekend, Nat?
This week, I've worked very hard this week at school, teaching away, remote learning. I'm very excited to see our seniors returning next week, though. It should be good. And what about you, Brendan?
Not too much. I see Jayne's just joined us.
Hello, Jayne.
Hello, how are you?
Very well. Welcome to our show. Welcome to High Humidity. And thank you very much for deciding to come on board when we invited you to share your wisdom.
Thank you very much, and welcome to my beautiful pad on glorious Hamilton Island in the Whitsunday. So where are we? This way. Cat's Eye Beach. Beautiful.
Oh, yeah, that's sensational. That's a sensational view there.
Looks like you've got a lunch coming up later too down the back there.
You're welcome to come and join me after you finish the show.
Fantastic. All right, Jayne, well, we'll just go straight into our interview. Look, tell us a bit about yourself. I know that, you a small business operator, of course, and your focus in the work that you do as a consultant is in resilience and growth for business. So just tell us a bit more about yourself.
Yeah, look, I'm a Townsville girl. I've been here pretty much all my life since I was 12, so I think I'm almost a local now.
Yeah, you're getting there. You're nearly there.
Almost. And I've had businesses in Townsville for about 25 years or so, and I've sat essentially as the CEO of our group of businesses. So we had allied health practices, we've had retail, and tourism are probably the main sort of areas that we've focused on. I've also sat as a board director, and I've sat on a lot of quite small community boards through to fairly major billion-dollar companies as well. And one thing I've learned from running my own businesses, as well as sitting on a variety of boards over a number of industries and different scales, is that the strategy that you use across all of those is fundamentally similar, never the same, but similar. Okay. And importantly, it's transferable. So I guess we've sold out of most of our business interests in the last couple of years, quite a few years. And now I work pretty much full-time as a business consultant helping other businesses. So I use those strategies that I've learned from both my individual businesses and the board work that I've done to help other businesses grow and develop.
Fantastic. So look, let's just talk about, what our current climate and COVID-19 and the implications. What do you see as the biggest challenges facing small and medium businesses? I mean, obviously, we've got real problems, but what do you think are the biggest challenges in terms of moving forward as well?
Yeah, look, Nanette, I will say I've become somewhat of a disaster expert, unfortunately, over recent years. I have a very strong connection to the Whitsundays area, and 2017 I was involved in helping businesses manage the crisis that was Tropical Cyclone Debbie. And then in 2019, of course, we got absolutely smashed by the floods in the North Queensland region, Townsville and out west and so on. And I've been working a lot with helping businesses through that. We're just starting to see the signs of recovery, and then we get smacked by COVID-19. I will say it's been a very, very tough environment for business in our region. What are the main challenges? Look, they're different for every business, and I think it's important to recognise that everyone's at different stages. Some businesses are thriving, some are doing quite well.
Yeah, I was going to say it's not all. It's not as much as it's all doom and gloom. There's quite a few businesses that are sort of pumping through, and it is that interesting sort of take on the environment. The economy.
Economic environment. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I work with one practice who's a psychology practice, and they're booming, because, people are needing their support. And just on that topic, I think it's important to recognize that businesses are dealing with loss. The majority, the ones that are not thriving, are dealing with loss. And I will say the majority of businesses are suffering. There's pockets that are doing well, but they are the exception. So the majority of businesses are dealing with loss, and it is a grieving process. It's important that we recognise that. So, the normal stages of grief are what businesses go through, and that's often in the early stages, of denial. I can't believe this is happening to me. And I probably easiest to reference this with the floods. I guess that we had a lot of people coming in and to the Small Business Recovery Centre where I was volunteering, and they couldn't believe that this had happened, and that's the denial phase. Then we go through the anger phase, really mad that the council hadn't fixed this so that this wouldn't happen, or whatever. Then we tend to go through the seeking understanding phase, like why has this happened and how can I manage that? And then we start to move forward into the acceptance stage. And it's only when we get to that stage that we can actually start to move forward. Sorry, I missed a stage. The other stage of grief is depression. Now, not everybody goes through that, fortunately, but a lot do. But I think so you've got the denial, the anger, the seeking understanding, the depression, and then we move to acceptance.
So where do you think most people are at the minute? Denial still, or?
No, I think we've moved through that. I think we've moved through with COVID. I think the denial was certainly there for a long period of time. And for some people, it still is. Some people are really severely underestimating the economic impact and the health impact of this. We've not many, but we've still got some people that think this is just like the flu. It's not. I have a medical background. It's not. But, we've still got some in that phase. But look, I'd have to say that the majority of people probably almost skipped the anger phase, because I think, there's been some anger, devoted at China, and I certainly don't want to add fuel to that fire. But fundamentally, I think most people accept this just happened. It's just, a bad situation.
Just a part. Well, if you look back in history, it's happened every 100 years sort of thing.
It has. And actually, that's a really good, important point, Brendan, because people, the use of the word unprecedented is unprecedented. I've never heard that word used so much.
Everything's unprecedented these days. It's, it's a buzzword, and it is frustrating because, if you do happen to get a rain event these days, it's unprecedented. Like, what are we saying for that? We're saying for that day, or we're saying for this year? We're saying
it's all relative. Yes, it's all relative.
And we've had pandemics. Not quite on this scale. Probably ever, because of the global migration of people. But we have had pandemics.
Yeah.
We have had these things. We just, touch wood, haven't had too many of them in Australia, but we are dealing with it. But in terms of the stage, I think most people are probably now at that seeking understanding stage and moving into the acceptance stage. But everybody's journey is different. And, I'm just working with people, the sort of process that goes through with my clients is the initial, for example, businesses that had to close overnight. So restaurants, cafes, beauty industry, gyms, those sort of theatres, entertainment, all of those, that was obviously devastating, and it was unexpected, that it would happen so dramatically. So it's that dealing with the shock and the anger and the denial initially. And then it's helping them sort of manage through that process. So this has happened. It's not great, but it's happened. It's the situation we're in. What can we do? And that's probably the biggest message that I get through to people through these periods is, there's no point focusing on what we can't do any longer. The world has changed, and a lot of the world will never go back to what we knew before. It has changed, whether that's good or bad. It is what it is. Now, what can we do? And let's focus on that.
Yeah. That's an interesting thing, because as soon as it happened, as soon as we're locking it down, people did adapt quite quickly. Like, I think, some humans struggle to adapt. There's still people out there that probably haven't adapted to technology, but the fact that you had, I'll use the fitness trainers. They went straight across to using Zoom and all that sort of stuff, and whether they were still turning a profit, it kept people active. It kept people motivated, because it's people doing exercise. It's not always about losing weight. There could be people that need to do it for mental health problems, and all that. So it was interesting that people sort of just didn't, sit on their bums and just do nothing. People adapted straight away. And I think some of those businesses that adapted quicker than others, seen that, they probably, whether they had margin loss, whether it was down 20%, 30%, whatever, but they didn't have full losses where it was like, okay, close the doors. So I think adaptability, moving forward is a big thing that a lot of businesses will look at.
One of the, if I could add to that, one of the observations that I saw during it too, and particularly in the area of cafes and restaurants, is how, you know, they adapted to this takeaway phenomena. You know, there was a lot more takeaway, but I found it was quite interesting too that people were banding together. Okay, we want to help this business. Like I know, for example, at my school, there were a couple of teachers that said, look, let's help this cafe. Let's order lunch from this cafe every day when we were going into work, and, you know, got a whole bunch of people and staff. So, you know, it was other people in the community going, all right, we're going to keep, you know, these young people employed in these cafes. If we're going to do that, we need to support them. So yeah, lots of really good stuff, I think.
Yeah, a lot of people who actually where their situations didn't change, like they still had the same amount of hours. You're right, because the people that I sort of spoke to, they tried to eat out more purely because it was okay, well, let's try and keep them afloat just by spending more money. You know, we've still got jobs, we're still doing 40-hour weeks.
That's right.
Let's you know, let's open up a bit just to try and get that money flowing as another form of I don't know, I wouldn't call it welfare, but as another form of trying to keep the wheels turning in the communities.
It's keeping the business afloat. And I mean, you know, the federal government has used the terminology, we want to pause business. We just want to halt it for a period of time till we get the health crisis sort of under control. And then we still want these businesses to be in existence, because when we reopen, we need that infrastructure. I mean, if the business literally closes, it's much harder to open it back up other than pausing it. And I will say, you know, all credit where credit's due. The JobKeeper has been enormously valuable.
I think that money started flowing this week. Is that?
Yeah. And I will say on that though, there's an awful lot of businesses that have not applied for JobKeeper. And, you know, people really seriously need to get some advice on that. A lot of people have kind of looked at it, it's too complicated, or they don't understand it, or they don't think that they're eligible, and they haven't applied, and they really need to get some positive support on that. One of the things too to note is that because we were, you know, the typical rule or the initial rule with JobKeeper, it's been a moving beast. It's been changing quite often. It's been hard to keep up with the legislative changes. But when they initially came out, they said you need to take your March turnover and compare it to the same period last year, March last year, and if you were more than 30% down, then you're in. That was the initial, and then it's had many iterations since then, and they've expanded that, which is great. But a lot of people, you know, remember in North Queensland, we were in a natural disaster last year.
Yes, so that's right.
A lot of businesses had very little income March last year, so it's not comparable. And again, they've recognised that as a specific thing, that people that were in bushfires or floods or drought that were in a disaster last year can use different periods. So we can compare back to 2018, or we can compare, you know, for a 3-month period and so on, which is good.
On the live stream, we've got a message from someone, and this person has said, it's time to get our businesses open. Many won't survive being half open. What's your opinion on that, Jayne?
Yeah, look, as I said, you know, the JobKeeper, if you have a look at this pause thing, if you have a look at most businesses, there's 3 major costs that most businesses have. One is staff. JobKeeper will take care of that. If you've had a downturn of more than 30%, if you're closed up, then that'll take care of that. The second is your rent. And again, the national government has got a mandatory code of conduct for principals into commercial leasing. So if you've had 100% drop off in your rent, you are entitled to negotiate 100% rent relief. Now, that doesn't mean you don't pay 100% of your relief. Half of that is to be waived and half of that can be deferred, but you can negotiate that. So you have your wages costs are covered, your rent costs are covered and or deferred, and then the third cost is the cost of goods. Now, if you're not trading, you have no cost of goods. So that's what I was referring to, this pause. So you can allow a business to pause, and sure, you're not going to be making any money through this period, but you're not going into a massive big hole. So people need to do their cash flow statements. They need to understand what their financial position is, because for a lot of people, it's not as bad as they think. Now, in terms of opening up, totally, I have a commercial background. We definitely need to start opening up, but it needs to be done safely and it needs to be in a controlled way. I am a little concerned, I will say, about the opening up of restaurants, where they say that you can have, at this stage, 10 people in your restaurant. Now, you know, I deal with people that have got little tiny cafes that can only fit 10 people in anyway. That's great for them. But I also deal with people that have got, you know, maybe they can fit 100 or 200 people in their restaurant. Now, the cost of them opening up is just
outweighs.
They might need three quarters of the table full to actually pay for that night. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, that half opening is going to be different. It's going to be good for some. It's not going to be good for others. But, that's okay. You've got to have a plan, and we have a plan, and we'll move forward. I think it's just important to recognise you can't have a plan on this scale that's going to work for everyone. And everybody needs to cut each other a bit of slack, I think, and we are moving forward.
Just on that, I'll make 2 points. You said that business moving forward in Australia will be a lot different to what we were used to. So my thing, and I know a lot of listeners out there would probably be thinking along the same lines. Do you think that Australia will see manufacturing brought back?
Oh God, I hope so. There's
you and a lot of other people.
There's a management term called just in time, from a flow
from manufacturing.
Absolutely, just in time manufacturing. So we kind of it's become a real thing in the last few years that we don't want to hold a lot of stock. We just want to have enough so that we're just in time.
Yeah, they look at stock turns, parts or whatever. They look at how many they sell.
You're not holding your stock. I mean, we used to have footwear retail, and I would go out the back and see hundreds of boxes of shoes stocked in the back, and I would literally see $100 bill in each of those boxes of shoes, because that was my cash just sitting on the shelf, and it means nothing to me until it's sold. You've got to. So this just-in-time manufacturing was very much a thing, and we've been caught with our pants down, frankly, with PPE for the health industry. And I would like to think that our governments will now invest locally in manufacturing so that we don't have to go offshore, so we're not so dependent. So you know what, people have got short memories. This is major at the moment, and everyone's all up in arms at the moment. I do worry that people will forget, but I do hope that we've learned a valuable lesson in that, and I do hope that we keep a lot more things within Australia. And frankly, we need government support, because why do we go offshore? Because it's cheaper. So we need to invest in ourselves.
It's funny, like people often say, we've lost manufacturing forever. It's let's just look at other things and don't worry about it. But you got to look at, okay, why do we lose manufacturing? It was the cost. Okay, well, let's look at the cost. What happened? Oh, well, our cost of power went up. Okay, why did the cost of power go up? We sold off the power stations, and now they're CEOs and they're running it, and they want return on their investment. Okay, well, why do we do that? Oh, we want free market. Okay, well, why do we want that? Oh, so it's competitive. Well, hang on. We went to free market. We sold all our power stations. Now we're paying more than ever. Like, I just don't see how that's a smart idea. But yet, we've got one side of politics who says, no, that's how you got to do it. We just have to do it like that. And to me, whether you call it corruption, whether you call it collusion, whether you call it just plain right dumb, but we've backed ourselves into a corner, and the only way out of it is to, unfortunately, re-regulate some of these things that some brainiacs thought that it'd be a good idea, and let's play on a level playing field. Well, I'm sorry, but when we're getting the wages that we get, now cost of living's X amount, and we're trying to compete with people who get a bowl of rice for per day, that's not a level playing field. There's no such thing. So as far as I'm concerned, if we spent a lot more money on industry enabling infrastructure rather than actually just blowing money, we would have a lot more money in the kitty, so we wouldn't have to sell off assets flat out and go to that free market that one side of politics has lived for forever.
On that note too, Jayne, just some of your opinions. I mean, obviously, yes, we've got to get manufacturing happening in this country a lot more, but let's look at North Queensland. What do you see as the potential in that regard, or the biggest growth areas or possibilities in that regard?
Yeah, look, I think, I think in terms of what's going to lead our recovery, I think you'd have to say it'll be infrastructure. It'll have to be major infrastructure projects, and we're going to need fairly heavy duty government funding into that, and all of those reasons that Brendan just went through. And, that was some, respectfully, Brendan, you were using quite high level strategic thinking there to follow the flow through. And, maybe you've got higher, how do I say this tactfully? That's what we need in our governments, and maybe we don't at the moment, I guess is what I'm trying to say. We need it because it's exactly the sort of thought process that we have to have through, so that we can look at the bigger picture. Unfortunately, governments are driven by the
election cycle, 3 or 4 year terms.
Unfortunately.
So, anyway, that's a whole other conversation. I don't can of worms any more than I have already. But look, I do think think recovery will be driven by infrastructure. I think we need to really, I'd really like to see our tourism, and I know you've got Nick coming on later and he'll be talking about the glorious Sunday areas. But, you know, tourism is important. I think it's just really important that we look at a multi-faceted approach. You know, and I don't think we are. I think most things will come back. I think we've got to really support local right now, and May is Small Business Month, so I'd really encourage people to, as we're starting to get back out into the shops and into, you know, the world, which I must say it's a bit scary sort of going out now and seeing people face to face, but we, you know, we need to do that. We need to do it in a safe, measured way, and we do need to start spending money. So you know, one of our Easter holiday, we're big campers. We spend a lot of time out bush and going out to the smaller regional areas. And we had our camping holiday for Easter cancelled, of course, and that'll be one of the first things that we do, is to go back out into these smaller communities and spend our money with local. But you know, a lot of us have gone into online shopping now because we've kind of had to in isolation. That's okay, but shop with local businesses online, not your multinationals. You know, let's not do their big Amazon shop with somebody, you know, or eBay with dealing with people in other countries. It's
quite hard to try and, you know, there'll be a lot of small business owners that would struggle to even, you know, dream of going online with their shopping, you know, like with their, you know, trying to sell things online. And
well, you know, that's where they need to get support, because it's actually not that hard.
But I just know that, you know, there's people that, you know, I live in Ayr, there's in the Burdekin, there's, you know, some very good business people, but, you know, the adaptability, and we spoke about it earlier, the adaptability for some of those people is, you know, they would see it as impossible and, you know, it's pointless, or they would think, it's just too hard. And you sort of do feel for them, because you're thinking, well, yeah, maybe it is too hard, but like you said, you've got to find that support out in the.
And look, you know, one of the things that I'd say, if I may, just to talk about some government grants that might be helpful for people. If you happen to live in the Townsville, if you happen to live in the flood affected area, Townsville and out west, the 2019 floods, there are still some resilience grants. So the state government brought out a great grant. It's a $10,000 grant to allow you to have a consultant to come in and help you deal with those sort of things. Now, unfortunately, the Burdekin's not going to be able for that one, but I and many other community leaders have been lobbying the state government to bring out a similar grant for COVID-19. Now, if we have a look across the country, every other state apart from Queensland and Tasmania have already done this. So we've been lobbying very hard for the state government to bring these grants out. Now, I do understand that will happen in the fairly near future. I'm hopeful that it'll be a $10,000 grant to enable you to use a consultant to help you get through this situation. Now, that can be used for exactly what you're talking about. So you can use, you know, somebody like me that can help you on business growth and strategy and so on, or you can use a marketing company to help you sort of, you know, get your profile out there, or you can use a digital company to help you get online. So there is support, but you know what I'd say, in the meantime, before we get those grants, people need to have a look. If you haven't got a small business in a regional town, if you haven't got a Facebook page, you have to. An awful lot of sales occur there. And you can do Facebook, you can set up a Facebook shop relatively easily. Now, if you've got even if you just know how to use Facebook and how to use Google, you can pretty much do that by yourself. You can do it better with a consultant to help you do it, but at least you can get something started. And that's the sort of pivot that has happened through COVID-19. People have just simply had to dig deep and figure out how to do that. And they
some really good advice there. There are grants out there to assist businesses, so make sure people look into that. So listeners, please pass the word around if people are not aware of the grants. Look, I have a comment here from someone on the stream as well, wondering what you think about this. Collectively, regardless of badge on the shirt, colour of the cap, the elected parties need to put personal aside and take the North to federal and state. What do you think about that, Jayne?
Take the North to federal and state to have a voice. North, yes, totally agree. I do that on a daily basis. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, and I'm not afraid to have a bit of crack at governments where cracks are due.
Are they talking about splitting the state? Is that what they mean? Or
Just north as a region, I would imagine.
okay.
I interpret that to take our voice to the state and federal government, and I do that regularly. And I mean, I must say I'm in regular contact with both our state government through our Queensland Small Business Champion and through Shannon Fentiman, who's our Minister for Small Business. So I communicate with those guys on a very regular basis. I also communicate very regularly with Phil Thompson, who's our local federal member, and and he listens, and as to Shannon Fentiman as well. So again, not putting any colour to that. Yes, people. I just encourage people to have their voice. And the other thing on that is social is actually a really good way that you can do that. So hop on, Shannon Fentiman from a business, they've all got Facebook pages, they've all got LinkedIn profiles. So you as an individual, a little tiny business owner in the Burdekin or out west or wherever you are, can hop on. You can actually send a message to Shannon Fentiman. You can send a message to Phil Thompson. And if they don't personally read it, oftentimes they do personally read it. But if they don't, then one of their staff members do. So it does get looked at. So we have access to doing that.
And in response to that, I'm just going back to the stream. The poster put, until there is a strong enough individual, the government isn't listening to many political members. They're protecting position and title, and the alignment in business is too deep. Would you agree with that at all, Jayne? I mean, it probably need more explanation, but there is a suggestion that the alignment in business is too deep in terms of
need
government.
A bit more information. Is that a bit of favouring their donors?
Wow.
Yeah, perhaps.
Look, if I could make a comment on that, and again, this is, I'll say this, I'm led to believe that, so I don't get sued, so I don't get in trouble, but I'm led to believe that you've got one of the major supermarkets gives both sides of politics, both of the major parties, $10 million each year. So they've got to bet both ways. Whether that's true, whether that's hearsay, come from a pretty reliable source. If that's what's happening, and you can go, it's there to look up. I just haven't, bothered about looking it up, but you can see companies. There's a large company in the Burdekin that donates to both parties, both major parties.
That's not uncommon.
No, it's not uncommon, but that's probably what that viewer is saying. Like, there's just, they're essentially keeping them propped up in power, and that's why probably the places like North Queensland aren't getting ahead, is because the people who want to see it go ahead probably don't have the big enough checkbooks.
Yeah, I don't know. I tend to think that the majority of people in politics, frankly, you can earn a lot more money outside of politics than inside politics if you're a high level thinker. I tend to think that the majority of people in politics are there for the right reasons as a general rule. I think the system is set up, as we said, on this election cycle, and so people do tend to get caught in, well, I've got to do something to get re-elected again.
Yeah.
But, the system is just set up to take political donations. Have a look at America if you want to see how that works.
Yeah. All right, but the point about representation, though, is an interesting thing, Jayne. We've got 93 members of parliament and state government, and 73 of those are within a 250-kilometre radius of the Brisbane CBD, and they're actually doing their job there. Representing their electorates, which of course is largely in the southeast corner. So beyond that, we've got about 17 members of parliament that cover central and north Queensland. So the representation in terms of numbers alone, regardless of political persuasion or, what colour they are in terms of political parties, is quite light on. What do you think about that, Jayne? How do you think that might, you got a perception on that or an opinion on that?
I do. I advocate very strongly. I mean, probably the best example for me to flick to there is in the board governance role. So, I sit on numerous boards, and of recent years, it's become this, we want diversity on boards, and so we want gender diversity. So that's now, becoming better, thankfully.
Yeah.
Still not as it should be, but it's better than it should. Then we want sort of cultural diversity. So we want to have some First Nations people on. We want to have some people that represent our community. community of various other cultural diversities. But the one thing that gets forgotten about is regional diversity.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we're talking about there.
Mm.
So kind of look at that, you know, we've got people representing us, that's great, but like you say, they're a very small percentage of the group, and so our vote is not worth as much. And so, you know, that's again, that's a bigger piece of the puzzle. Is it a problem? Yeah, it is a real problem. It really is. So I do think that we need to have a strong regional voice. And, you know, like I said, people can sort of lobby, and politicians do listen. You know, it's a bit of a standing rule. If 3 people contact their local member with an issue, then it's an issue. If 5 people contact them, it's a major issue, you know, because most people can't be bothered. Most people are apathetic, and we're all very good at being keyboard warriors and sort of having a bit of a rant at a party or whatever. But, you know, do we actually do anything about it? So, you know, I just challenge people to actually make contact with your federal and state members, and not just locally. You can contact people, like I said, Shannon Fentiman. I've got no idea what electorate she actually represents, but I know her inside out because she represents business. And so I can have direct contact with her, and I do get a voice. So, you know.
All right. Well, both Brenda and I are advocates for the creation of a new state of Australia, you know, perhaps in our generation, perhaps not, who knows. And obviously, you know, there's various lobby groups that have been working on this for many, many years. It's something that's existed perhaps even pre-federation. Do you have a position on the creation of a 7th state of North Queensland?
I'll just point out something quickly. I don't think we should just do 7. I think we should probably do 8, 9, 10. Probably cut WA in half.
It worked for the US, didn't it?
Well, I just, you know.
Oh, well, there, that's a good point.
Well, you know, the biggest thing for me is why should someone, and this is, it's not about political parties. It's not, for me, it's not about that. You know, I don't care who wants to support it. But for me, it's why should someone in Brisbane tell someone in Bamaga how they should live?
Yeah, totally.
You know, that's the.
So it goes back to the point about representation.
Yeah,
too,
the disconnect from, you know, why should someone in Charters Towers have the same? Why should they live by the same rules as someone that lives in, I don't know, Ashgrove? You know, like what? It's going to be two different things. Like what? You know, why should?
And look, one of the good examples of that, Brendan, was when they just announced that you know, we can now travel 50 kilometres.
Yeah, 50 kilometres.
Now, if you live out bush, you might not
be down the road.
You know, let alone the next city. So, you know,
you might get to the next letterbox, maybe not even that.
we couldn't.
They've increased that. So that was a decision that was made by politicians that have no idea about rural, but that's okay. They've opened that up and so on. I totally get that point. Brendan and I lobby very, very hard for regional representation in every area of work that I operate in. Do I think we need another layer of government or another government? No, I don't. I guess my viewpoint would be on that. You know, I'd actually argue for a 2-tier governance system rather than a 3-tier. So currently we've got our federal, we've got our state, and we've got our local. And I totally hear you on that point that we don't get a fair go. And I do think if we were to do a 7th state in, you know, North Queensland, that could do that. But it just puts in more governance. And frankly, you know, if you have a think about it, could we manage without state? Could we manage with one federal government and then the locals that look after the local? I mean, I think that's another level, and it's a whole other conversation.
Yeah,
of course. Yeah, no,
probably not going to happen, you know, in the short term. But can I put my hand on heart and say advocate for another? You know, for more politicians, for more administrators. You know, the costs involved in running a government are phenomenal. So, you know, I do get the argument for a separate state, a North state. I do get that. But my personal preference would be for a 2-tier government.
Because just on that, like I would think, you know, that's the first thing everyone looks at. Oh, you know, just going to have more politicians, and you go, yeah, fair enough. Like maybe, you know, maybe they're not the flavour of the month. Like no one ever wants more politicians because it's, you know, everyone has to pay for them. But in saying that, if we did have that 7th state, and then we, like for instance, had a direct, okay, we're going to build these dams, we're going to do this, we're going to have cheaper power, and we're going to get infrastructure, and we're going to have manufacturing in North Queensland, the new state. All of a sudden, I think if there was such an influx of opportunity in North Queensland, and we actually developed not just the coast, not just the East Coast, but we actually went in Richmond, Hewland, and all those places, and actually got the place booming like it can be, like it should be. I think people's, gee, I was wrong about that. We, now that we've got people that are got their finger on the pulse, and they're not, living down in George Street trying to make decisions about what goes on in out at Mount Isa, I think people had changed their point of views on it because.
And the other problem, Brendan, in terms of the the representation or making decisions that affect the people that are close to them, is that population growth. We're seeing it grow in the southeast quite rapidly. So that will only mean, when redistribution of electorates and increase in numbers in government, it's only going to mean more representation from the southeast corner. So we're going to even have a weaker voice down the track when population increases, whereas population is not increasing at a fast rate in central and north Queensland, and if anything, it's slowing down. Where it's potentially going to slow right down. So the voice and the political punch, I call it, is a term I use all the time, the political punch in government is only going to get weaker. So in my opinion, the model representation is flawed dramatically. And it's, to me, the answer is looking at the creation of a new state, because it will also, with development and major infrastructure, it will draw the populations away from the cities, which is what we want as well.
I'll just make one final point. When state parliament was in Townsville, they were voting on and debating about go-cards in Townsville. Like, they were talking about a Brisbane issue in Townsville. And I just thought to myself, that just typified how disconnected they were. It should, when they come to Townsville, it should have been all about North Queensland. It should have been all about development in regional area. But no, we were talking about go-cards. And that just showed me that they don't care. That proved that they don't care.
Well, it's the end understanding. And look, you're not going to get argument with me on any of the things that you've just said. But Brendan, when you said, people get very focused on why do we need more politicians? When you have a look at a government structure, it's not the cost of the politicians that, when I say let's get rid of the state governments and just do federal and local, it's all the administrators, it's all the infrastructure. So can I support another level of that? No. And again, as I've alluded to before, have a look at what happens in America in a crisis situation, trying to get 50 states to all agree on one thing. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah, struggles.
For me, I think,
very good point.
The federal and then the provincial or the regional government, I think we'd achieve all of those goals that you've just argued for, Brendan, with that focus. I'd like to see, Brisbane try to manage with the natural resources they've got compared to how we'd go. So,
yeah. All right. Let's go. Do you have any other comments or suggestions or ideas for North Queenslanders in the context of COVID-19, or, where we're at in terms of moving forward, Jayne?
Look, I think it's just a matter of, as I said before, let's just focus on what we can do and how we can pivot. And we've already had some examples of businesses doing that. I think there's going to be some huge learnings from what we've been through. In fact, I know there are already many huge learnings. I think the whole way that we, certainly from my perspective, how we do business is going to change with the use of technology, and some of that's for the good. So it's been a bit awkward, but we're going to take the good things and we'll continue to run with those. And I think just in closing, really, I just we live in a fantastic part of the world. I don't have to tell you guys that, this as well as I do.
Oh, we do, don't we?
It's a little shaky at the moment, but it'll come back. And I guess the final thing I just wanted to say, as we spoke about earlier, is Small Business Month, and encourage people. It's just so important to support small business, so that these guys are still here and they're the infrastructure that will help us move forward. So when we're ready to spend our dollars, our JobKeeper dollars, or our whatever dollars we've got, shop local.
Yes, and shop local. Thank you, Jayne. Thank you so much, Jayne, for coming on our show today. You've really provided us with some great information, and it's wonderful to have you here. So I'll now let you go.
Thanks for that, Jayne. Thanks for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
I really appreciate it. Have a great weekend, and happy Mother's Day for tomorrow. Okay, bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Radio.
Okay. All right. Okay, we'll continue on, and we've got now Nick Dametto, who is the member for Hinchinbrook, and he's agreed to be interviewed and to join us today to talk about the North, all things the North, and particularly with the focus on, manufacturing and recovery with COVID as well. So I'll just drop Nick into. Okay. Hello, Nick. How you going? Oops.
Okay, wait, mate.
Hello, Nick. How you going?
Does he know he's on?
I don't think so. He's having a stretch.
Hey, Nick, you there?
Hello, Nick. Hello, Nick. Are you there?
I think so.
Yes,
Yeah,
you're here. We saw you have a nice big stretch, Nick. Welcome to High Humidity, Nick. It's so good to have you on our show today. It's really, it's a beautiful day too, isn't it, North Queensland? Aren't we enjoying the change in weather? I think it's fantastic. All right, Nick.
Absolutely the best time of year to be in.
I can't wait to go camping though, Nick. How long do you reckon until we can go camping?
You can actually go camping right now if you really want to, but you've got to go on private property.
Okay.
In a couple of weeks, it'll be opened up to national parks, state forests, that sort of stuff as restrictions ease. But right now, yeah, if you want to go camping, if you can camp within 50 kilometres and be on a private property.
You mean just down the road?
Yeah. Put a tent up in your backyard.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey,
all right.
Hey, Nick, we'll push into some news that broke probably about half an hour ago. I don't know if you've seen this, but Jackie Trad, she's just stepped standing aside from her ministerial duties.
It is, yeah.
Triple C investigates her alleged involvement in the appointment of a school principal in South East Corner, Brisbane school down there that they're about to open with about 1,600 kids. It's a very interesting move, and the fact that she's being investigated by the Triple C, they believe there must be a case there to investigate. But it's probably not a bad. I was looking and thinking about this over the last 20 minutes, and I thought, it's probably not a bad political move from the Labor Party to actually have her step down. She's brought a lot of heat to them over the last 2.5 years, and coming into a state election, relieving her or letting her relieve herself, as that's been portrayed, giving her the opportunity to step aside, let the Labor Party maybe regather some of that composure, and perhaps maybe try and, by putting her to one side, maybe winning back a little bit of the trust of some of their traditional Labor Party voters, might be politically a very smart idea. And also, her seat's going to be highly contested by the Greens. So,
do you think they'll parachute her into another seat? Do you? Or?
I don't think so. I just think letting her step aside during the next 6 months will probably give her a really good opportunity to get into her seat and probably that
work. Yeah,
rather than working through the ministerial stuff that she usually would be tied up with in Treasury.
Yeah. So you actually you actually think it's a planned move because that's the first thing that when I showed Nanette, the first thing that Nanette said, she goes, well, wouldn't you think the the buying of the house was like a bigger issue, but
or at least equal.
Well, I would have thought the corruption. Anyway,
yeah.
It is what
all I can say is when it comes to trying to figure out why a state government or someone makes a move in politics, it's usually got about 4 or 5 different layers to it. It's not as all that it seems on the surface, let's say that.
Yes. All right, Nick, there may be some viewers today and later who will watch this because it is recorded that don't really know that much about you. So I thought it'd be a good opportunity for you to just start the interview with telling us a bit about your background and your life before politics.
Well, my background, I grew up in Ingham, a small sugarcane town just north of Townsville, about 100 k's north. Grew up on a small cane farm my grandfather owned, and went to Gilroy Santa Maria and Lourdes as went through my schooling, 2 little Catholic schools up there, or good-sized Catholic schools.
Yeah.
Then my first apprenticeship was working for Victoria Mill. So I worked for CSR as a fitter boiler maker. I always had a dream of becoming an electrician, and I applied for the electrical position there, and I got a phone call back saying you're third in line out of all the applicants. So you're going to be first in line to be a fitter Boilermaker. So I didn't even know what a fitter or a Boilermaker did. I knew I wanted to play for electricity. But opportunity opened, its door, and I took the opportunity and walked through it. After finishing my apprenticeship, I went into mining and construction, and then went into construction all the way over to Western Australia. I was up in the Pilbara region in Western Australia, working in Port Hedland, Christmas Creek, out past Newman.
Wow.
And then, in the Northwest Mineral Province, I worked mainly in the maintenance space. So shut down maintenance, and then I was a full-time maintenance fitter out at Osborne Mine for 3.5 years. So one of those people that have firmly got their feet planted in the ground, come from a background of industry, put myself into the position I am today because of the hard work I've done, I guess, understanding how things work out there. And before I got into politics, I'm trying to do a fast forward version. Got quite a lengthy background, but when it comes to my work history, but I decided to start my own tourism-based business, and I was running that for 2 years before getting into politics. I ran Townsville Water Sports. It was a jet ski hire and tour company that worked out of the Breakwater Marina here in Townsville. So I guess it was a good reason for the Katter Party to approach me. Not only had I had a background working in mining and construction and trade background, but I also had the experience and the know-how of running my own small business, which gives me kind of two sides to the coin. I've been a worker and I've been an employer.
So Nick, you just touched on that, like that you've come from industry, and that's a fair point. Like when you look at politicians, you could have a look at what their jobs have been, and there's a lot of politicians who actually haven't had a real, what I call a real job. Like they haven't worked their way from the ground up. They haven't done a trade. They haven't owned a business. They haven't run a business. They haven't had the hustle and bustle. The
trials and tribulations.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I've heard where there's politicians, and they're on the front bench where they come in, they're the helping hand for a minister, and then they get promoted to this, and then all of a sudden they're now also a minister. You think to yourself, well, okay, you've been in politics for a long time, but what grassroots do you have? Like what have you actually done? Or, you've never put yourself on the line to actually get to where you are. You've just had that helping hand. You've been parachuted into another seat or whatever. Being one of the people that's actually had a job and worked up from the ground, does it frustrate you seeing those people that haven't really had to work in industry or for industry in politics?
I guess when you have a look at sort of the roadmap most politicians take into a line of working as an MP and being elected, especially for the two major parties, what they try and do from what it looks like from the outside looking in is they try and groom these people from the start. They either come from a Young Nationals background or a Young Labor Party background where they've been a part of a party branch. Through that, they're picked up usually to work in a minister's office or an MP's office or an advisor somewhere along the line. Then, or they've been a union delegate or somewhere like that, where they've sort of come from that, real politically driven or advocacy background. And they end up, either impressing someone along the way. And yeah, you're right there, buddy. They'll actually parachute them into a seat. So. For example, a strong Labor seat, they might need to run someone in that seat. They'll usually pick someone that's either worked in a Labor Party office, worked as a union rep or a union delegate, or someone that's comes through the public service sort of roles. With and the same sort of thing happens with the LNP as well. What the KRP seems to do very well is pick people from industry, and look at myself. I've come from a mining, construction, trades background, tourism and small business. I feel like I can speak quite credibly and with some authority on some of this stuff. Robbie Katter, coming from a mining and what they call it, the consultancy background.
What do you call it?
He understood the real estate.
Evaluating houses.
Evaluating, that's right. Before he got into politics and running quite a successful business doing that.
Yeah, he did, yeah.
Jayne Arlett, more blisters on his hands over the years than most people.
What was he, rail, wasn't he?
Yeah, back when you actually swung a sledgehammer in the railway line instead of sitting in a machine doing all the work. Shane was one of those guys that just came from nothing and then worked his guts out to get into politics.
Yep.
And for all the right reasons. You've seen what's going on out there. You've seen what the problems are. So you feel that you need to get involved to make a difference. Now, back when you start talking about ministers, for example, we've got an ag minister right now. That's his portfolio is agriculture and fisheries. And, I always have a bit of a giggle when I look back at some of the footage over the last 12 months of, particularly a Channel 7 interview.
You're talking about the fishing rod one?
Yeah. When you've got a fisheries minister that uses a fishing line upside down because the way it goes, then you think to yourself, I've really got a true belief. If you're going to be a minister in a portfolio, whoever's choosing the front bench should be saying, all right, that person has worked in tourism. Let's give them a run in that. That person has a background in agriculture. Let's give them a run at that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that doesn't happen. It seems to be, the internal party politics. They make a decision who's going to sit where, and off they go.
All right. Well, let's talk a bit more politics. I mean, do you believe, Nick, that the current state government and the past governments have failed Queensland, or particularly North Queensland? What's your position on it? I know it's a big global question, but have we been failed?
Well, first get out there and talk to people in your community. That's what I do. They're unhappy. They're really unhappy of what the two major parties have done over the last 20 years. You look at the seat of Hinchinbrook, it's been it's gone through some hands over the years. It was originally a Labor Party seat, believe it or not. All the old cane cutters voted Labor because there was more labourers than farm owners, than property owners. Then it went to Country Party. Then it went across after the death of the Country Party. National Party picked it up. And then as the National Party was gobbled up by the Liberal Party in Queensland, it became a Liberal national seat. And people obviously weren't happy with what was going on for them to make such a sharp swing across to a minor party. And I think people these days are looking towards minor parties mainly because we're willing to get our hands dirty and chew any bone, really. There's fights that we're taking up and I'm taking up every day through my electorate office, and people ringing from all around the country asking for the KAP's help on stuff. And it's because we literally we're the guerrilla warfare guys out there. We'll take on any fight. But has both sides of government failed us? Well, you have a look, national. We haven't built any major infrastructure in Queensland in 30 years. We haven't built a dam in 30 years. We as a party look back on the achievements of Sir Joh Bjelke-Petersen, the kind of work that he done, everything from electrifying the rail system in the southeast corner, all the way through to building the Burdekin Dam. Those nation-building projects set this state up, and really, the state has suckled off the tip of most of those projects for the last 30 years and benefited from them, but haven't done anything more to add to those.
Well, on that note, Nick, only this week, I think the state government announced as part of, the recovery process, the 1 billion Pacific motorway upgrade was announced on Tuesday, and they were rabbiting on about, create thousands of jobs. And I know that on your Facebook page, you kind of, had a bit to say about that. Is there any major, sort of initiatives that are going to come our way? You got a feeling that they're going to start supporting some big stuff here, or?
Well, they've got to, if we want to get ourselves out of this, we've got to work our way out of it. And the first announcement, of course, was the M1 upgrade, $1 billion.
Yeah.
You know what we could build up here with $1 billion? You could start stage 1 of Hell's Gate. You could start the rail line and finish the rail line into the Galilee Basin. Those sort of nation-building projects have legacy jobs. You just don't create jobs during their construction phase. It
actually kicks on.
Exactly. Could you imagine if we built Hell's Gates Dam? We would have a whole nother section of agriculture as big as the Burdekin.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you start looking at what does that mean for the economic benefit for the rest of the state? It's massive. They need to do this. I always go back to what President Roosevelt did after the Great Depression in the US. They built their way out of a recession. They They built things like the Hoover Dam. They dredged the Mississippi. Now, at the time, those projects were never going to stack up. No way in the world. If you're trying to get full cost benefit out of those projects in 10 years, you're crazy. That's why a lot of these projects aren't stacking up with their business cases.
No, they're 50-year plans, aren't they?
Exactly. Right now, all these years later, the economic benefit of the projects like that have been, paid itself 20 times over.
Yeah.
I also noticed this week too, announced only 2 days ago by the state government, that 7,000 square kilometres of land is being released for coal and gas exploration in Queensland, at Blackwater, Ralston, Banana, Moonee, Injune, Surat. I mean, we're going to open up. So we've got the honeypot creating more money, I would imagine, for the southeast corner. What's your position on that kind of stuff? I mean, I get frustrated. Do you get frustrated to see how much, wealth is generated in this part of the world, particularly in the mining sector, and it not coming back?
First, I'd like to answer that question by going back to the start of your question, the first part. Now, the idea of opening up all this new land and new areas for exploration.
Yeah.
That's really a red herring. For the state government to be saying that just before a state election, that gives everyone a bit of hope and dreams that maybe the Labor Party does want to put a tick next to mining, and they're finally realising what mining does for the state after pushing this green agenda for the last 2 terms. Where all they've tried to do is shut down mining in any sort of construction like that.
And people have such a short memory. People, they have such a short memory. Like there will be people out there that see this and go, "Oh, can't believe they've changed." I knew they'd come good. And they'll chair them to the pub once it opens. Go, oh, that's our Labor Party. They're unbelievable.
It is only exploration. That's one word, exploration. It's a lot of approvals if they were actually to go ahead. Yeah.
It makes me. It reminds me of a statement made by David Littleproud this week about the dairy, saying that finally he's willing to sit there and say deregulation has destroyed the dairy industry. No, it was like he was reading off the Honourable Bob Katter's song list.
Oh.
Unbelievable. And then you'll have National Party voters out there going, see, they're finally listening to us. Well, they've got all the power in the world right now, the LNP at the federal level. The Labor Party's got all the power at the state level to do these things. And, they just talk about it. I had a discussion this week, and to answer the back end of your question, is this actually going to transpire into some wealth generating projects for the state? Probably not. The Labor Party's quite happy to send out exploration crews, do some pretty non-invasive stuff out there, drill some holes in the ground, take some core samples, makes us look like we're on board with the CFMEU and groups like that. Are they going to open a mine? We're probably, from exploration to opening a new mine, you're probably 15, 20 years away.
Okay.
Well, the Carmichael mine, I think Adani's been here for 9 years, and I don't think they got dirt. Like they haven't even put a shovel in the ground yet, have they?
Oh, the construction's starting out there. Everything's being kept pretty quiet about that. They're doing a really good job at what they're doing out there. They're in line with all the environmental impact studies and all the stuff that they've put forward in their management plan, from my understanding. But they're just trying to, keep it quiet to keep the bloody protesters out of there. No one wants the green extremists out there annoying these guys while they're trying to work safely.
Well, while we're on the topic of shovels, let's talk about shovel-ready projects for the north. I know that today also in our local newspaper, the Townsville Task Force has been put together by, local to boost projects for the economy, and this group will be lobbying state and federal governments. But, let's talk about some shovel-ready projects that you would like to see get up, perhaps as part of the recovery phase.
I guess my first qualm with this is they've not included the state members for the area on the task force. So you've got a group of people out there that firmly got their feet planted on the ground. They're talking to their constituents, talking to the industry, and they're not even being included in this task force. It's completely mind-boggling why that would even happen. I've asked to be briefed, and that's about as far as what we've gotten with that, a briefing once a month. Now, shovel-ready projects, that's really interesting. So there's projects out there that I would consider shovel ready. Go and get out there and do it. The business case stacks up. The economic impact studies have stacked up. The environmental impact studies have stood up. Are they shovel ready? They need state governments and departments to get out of the way. Get out of the way. Projects out there, I've got an understanding of how a lot of these departments work now, and it's almost as if they come up with creative ways to say no to projects to ensure the state government doesn't have to spend money on things. Some of these shovel-ready projects, and mark my words, keep an eye out there over the next couple of months. You will see some of these projects be funded out of this $3.5 billion, this new line of credit that the state government has been able to access. They'll spend money on parks. They'll spend money on nice foreshore redevelopments. They'll spend money on, doing the fluffy stuff that doesn't really annoy anyone too much, but it makes it look like they care. But you won't see one dam start, and you won't see one rail line start, and you won't see any project start, mark my words, that has any legacy jobs.
Yeah.
Well, tell us about Copper String 2.0. I mean, to me, that's one of the most, we should be all embracing Copper String. What stage is it at the moment?
So Copper String 2.0, for a lot of the viewers out there that probably haven't heard of the project, it's the idea of building a transmission line from Townsville all the way out to the Northwest Mineral Province, so Mount Isa. What that actually enables the Northwest to do is have access to the grid, the electricity grid in Queensland. Now, the national electricity market sees, power being produced and sold between $35 to $80 a megawatt hour every day of the week. Sometimes it spikes and it has some low points where it actually goes into a negative trade, but that's about the average. The guys out there at Mount Isa and Mount Isa Mines, or Glencore or Osborne Mine, or all these other little mine sites around the place, if they don't have a generator on site, what they actually do, they have to buy from the power provider out there at Mount Isa. They're paying up to $180, $190 a megawatt hour, $200 a megawatt hour sometimes.
We spoke about that before, like the cost of doing business in Australia. We've sent all this manufacturing offshore because it's cheaper to do it overseas. Well, we're not doing this infrastructure enabling projects like Copper String 2.0, not like Hell's Gate, not building new power stations, not doing anything. And we've driven the price of doing business up in Australia. And this is the biggest problem that we've got currently. Like it's so frustrating. Like, this is a no-brainer. People come out and attacked, saying that to build another coal-fired power station in Collinsville. Well, it makes sense to do it, but not to make it bigger. Just put the same size one back in there. Don't, because the infrastructure's already there. You can put, the same size one back in there, but everyone wants to go build a bigger one. Why don't you spend the money, the $10 billion that you want to spend in Collinsville? Why don't you do it at Hell's Gate so you get the agricultural sector and you get the hydro? It just frustrates.
Illogical, isn't it?
Because people don't understand it.
I think, Brendan.
I mean, going back to Copper String too. I mean, we open up the Northwest Minerals Province. We make, power more affordable. It can only have benefits not just for the Northwest, but it'll flow on to a city like Townsville and the region generally in terms of job creation and everything that comes out of that, everything that spins out of that. And, I can see nothing but benefits. And I'm just flabbergasted that the investments aren't, they're taking so long, and it's such a battle. It's such a fight to get to first stage or second stage. So yeah, no, absolutely.
If I could just round up on the Copper String 2 seconds. So the benefit to Townsville is 1,000 jobs during construction. Most of those would be drive in, drive out, or fly in, fly out of Townsville. Yeah. Extending the life of these mine sites in the Northwest Mineral Province. So right now, if you're paying, say, $200 a megawatt hour, and you can afford to put 6% ore through your mills right now to produce copper, for example, if you can get that price down, say, even if it's down 35%, you can all of a sudden start putting your 4% ore through, which doubles your mine life. Now, all that 4% ore is actually sitting out on a stockpile. It's waste right now. And, this is the idea of becoming more efficient. And if we're going to ensure that, there's a lot of talk about advanced manufacturing at the moment. The only way we're going to bring advanced manufacturing back to Australia is reducing our input costs. Otherwise, we can't compete on the world stage when it comes to wages. Getting someone to work for $2 a day over in China is something we will never compete with. But we can compete with cheap power, and we can have the state and federal government put the right economic levers, whether it's through rebates, royalty reduction, or even tax incentives to actually set up in the regions and come back and bring manufacturing back to Australia. That's the environment that the state and federal government have a responsibility to do.
Very much. All right, Nick, here's a question for you. If you were Premier for 7 days, what would you do? What would you do right now?
I would pull all my Director Generals for every department into the room, and I'd be asking, what has the previous Premier or the previous government been asking you to hold back? There's frustration within department. There's departments that are saying to me, and people, in confidence saying to me, Nick, we are almost ready to get this over the line, but it needs the political will. It needs the political will to push it over the line. And that's why, we find ourselves coming into a state election in a very, very, it's a great time to be negotiating some of these projects. So first thing I do as Premier, I'd say, what are these projects that need the political will to get them started?
Yep.
Let's start them. Let's be proactive about this. Let's start doing this now. Secondly, I'd be going out to industry. And all these, I'd be pulling my ministers in, whoever my ministers were at the day. I'd be saying, who's been lobbying you once again? And who have you been saying no to? Let's start saying yes to this stuff. Instead of saying, we've got right now, government, and I think the Premier is doing something. She's not leading. She's pandering. She's listening to too many people, and governments are in the business of staying in government. And the way they do that is to make sure they count the numbers. They find out how many numbers they need to get back over the line and stay in government, and they pander to whichever group they need to make sure that those numbers stack up. That's not leadership. No. A true leader will go out there and do what's right, even if he's criticised or she's criticised for what she's doing. Have a bit of foresight, plan a year ahead. Instead of planning one term ahead, start planning a generation ahead.
Absolutely. That's the kind of leader I would like to see, Nick, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who feel the same way. All right. Look, what's your opinion about North and Central Queensland becoming a separate state, or the creation of a seventh state of Australia? Have you got an opinion and a perspective? I know the KAP has a policy around that, but what's your opinion? Yeah.
My opinion would be, I'd have the same opinion if I lived in Brisbane as I do in North Queensland here in Townsville. My opinion would be, we need a separate state to allow our state, allow the country to move forward. So we've got all this land and resources locked up here in North Queensland. We haven't even started tapping into this yet. But because we've got different ideologies down in the southeast corner of what's right and wrong for our state, and you have a look at for people who haven't done this exercise before, get on the Queensland Electoral Commission website, check out the size of Queensland, and check out where all the seats are positioned. You've got 80% of the seats jammed into this small southeast corner, so the votes are down there. So
what's the numbers? It's
73 within a 250 kilometre radius of the
and 17
CBD. 20 else, but 17 in central North Queensland. Yeah. And all of central and the north all the way up.
I believe we need to separate that part of the state and allow them to let them off the leash. And unfortunately, while you've got bureaucrats, departments, and ministers of the opinion that we need to run the state with how we are today, unfortunately, they're not ever going to let us off the leash unless we separate.
An interesting thing, and this goes to a federal stuff. So I talked to a girl, she from the LNP, talked to her, and I said, what's it like in Canberra? And she said the biggest problem that she's seen was that the people in these departments, and she said their grandfather was in that department, their father, and now they're in that department. And so you've got this generation of bureaucrats that haven't gone outside of Canberra. They've gone to the same schools for the whole time, and we go, oh, how come the country's not getting ahead? The bureaucratic bullshit is what's stopping this country from moving ahead. They've got people that haven't moved outside of Canberra who have been in that same loop, and we're here we are sitting up in North Queensland expecting a different result, when the biggest problem is, the first thing I'd pull those departments out, get an ag department, rip that straight out and put it, you might
decentralizing.
Put it in Mackay. You might get mining and put it out in Mount Isa. You might get tourism, chuck it up in Cairns. You might put something else in Townsville. Just pull those departments out. Like obviously we're talking about state stuff, but pull it out, decentralize government. If people aren't going to step.
Yeah, we've got a position on that. You just have a look. It's funny you say that. Firstly, there's an old saying: the king will come and go, but the cardinal will stay the same. The cardinal never changes. The church is always there. That's the old way of thinking, and that's the same that's going on right now at a state government and a federal government level. Governments come and go, but the bureaucracy, the department heads, everything stays the same.
Yeah.
And I remember in my first year of, and this is my first term, my first year as a MP, I was in Parliament House, and I had to go across the road to 1 William Street. Now that's where all people call it the Tower of Power. It's this huge monstrosity in the Brisbane city skyline, and this huge building is where all the head bureaucrats for the state work out of. Now I walked across there, and you've got to see this place. It is like the Taj Mahal, a palace. Everything is state of the art. The lifts, there's 4 lifts. It's absolutely brilliant piece of engineering. And then I had to walk back to Parliament House to finish my day in the House. The lift doesn't work. It hasn't had a facelift in about probably 20 years. The place is falling down around you. You're like,
who's important here?
The question starts going through your head. Who's running the state? Those guys across the road in the Tower of Power, or these people here that think they're running the state in
Yeah, and a lot of people wouldn't know that sort of insight. Like that's the first time I've ever heard that. And it just goes to show you who is actually running it. And you tend to sort of shake your head and just to hear that Parliament House is actually falling apart, and then you've got the Tower of Power is actually going ahead. The one thing, another story I heard, and this is quite interesting. They said when and this is from the fire service. They said when Labor was in there, and they were going to have a meeting. I can't even remember who told me this, but they were going to have a meeting, right, with the emergency departments. And when Labor was in, this is before Campbell Newman.
Yep.
And they'd get 5 emails from 5 different people, and they'd rock up and they'd have this meeting, and this person had sent it at 9 o'clock, this one at 10, for the meeting at 3 o'clock, and all, there'd be all these people telling them, there's a meeting, and they'd rock up and they'd sit around the table, and there'd be all these people, and not much had happened anyway. So Newman gets in, sacks 14,000. Obviously they're still there. Now they get 1 email, they rock up 3 o'clock, have this meeting, the same amount of action got taken, and they move on. The minute that Newman got kicked out, they were back to 5 emails for the same thing. And it just shows you just how inefficient and how ineffective that it is. And for them, they're just shaking their head going, oh, well, as terrible as it was that 14,000 people got put off, it seems that government's always telling industry, you need to be more effective, more efficient. And yet it would be unbelievable how many, in the Tower of Power, how efficient they how efficient they currently are. And in talking to Jayne before, she wants to see government reduced to 2 levels. And you can tell she's from private enterprise, because if private enterprise was running government, they would cut the guts out of it. And
efficiency is the key word there.
Running private enterprise, they'd be broke. Well, they kind of are.
What's that?
They're urging on the edge of $90 billion worth of debt. So
I was going to say that. To
Bit
you
of a
before.
problem.
What do you think? What do you think about the $90 billion? It'd be more now.
And
obviously, with this
blowing
COVID.
out and getting
Yeah.
bigger. Yes.
yeah, put it this way: I've got no problem with debt, but it's got to be good debt.
Yeah.
It's got to be debt that pays itself off. It's got to be debt that generates an income from whatever you've spent that money on. So if you're a small business person, say for example, you own a farm, you buy a new tractor. Well, you know that tractor's going to pay it off. It's working its guts out. You know, during the season, it probably has about a 6-hour sleep a night. It's working 24/7 to generate an income, so it pays itself off. But then also, once it's paid itself off, create profit for the person who owns it.
Yeah.
You start spending money on things that absorb money, like
tunnels.
Take up tunnels. You know, we got to
An overpass.
Start on Cross River Rail, mate. What I'll do with $5 billion would change this state.
$5 billion, like five. You know, if you quickly just throw some numbers around, so $5 billion, what do we get there? So we'd get Hell's Gate, you'd get rail line to the Galilee, so that's what $1 billion each.
Mm-hmm.
We got $3 billion to go.
Well, I'd get you know, investigate
Copper String. I think it's 1.5 billion.
Right, so we got 2.5 left.
You get my little
Well, no,
project
what's
up
it,
in the
1.4?
Hinchinbrook electorate, NQB, North Queensland Bioenergy.
How much is that? 300?
That's a $600 million project.
600 million.
600, 650. But there's private investment to get that off the ground. We'd only see it'd be started tomorrow if we could get 20 million out of the state and 25 out of the feds. The same money that they sunk into Mossman and basically burnt their cash doing that. We could have built a brand new sugar mill with that kind of investment.
Just while we're on sugar, just moving to sugar, I see Ag Force is coming into the sugar industry. What's your thoughts with that? You know, they've stood on a few toes there at cane growers. What's your opinion?
Well, to be completely honest, I don't have an opinion on this right now. I don't have a position on what side anyone should be going with or anything. I think what growers out there should be doing, though, is making an informed decision. Go along to the meetings. You know, there's not going to be able to have shed meetings right now with the current restrictions, but as things are lifted and meetings start, whether it's with cane growers or Ag Force or whoever wants to set up an advocacy group for the ag industry or the sugar industry, go to the meetings, have a look, make an informed decision. Don't follow the sheep. You know, just because your mate's doing it doesn't mean you should do it. Go and check it out for yourself. Make an informed decision. Think about it and make your decision after that. But, you know, I shouldn't be swaying people either way on this. Yeah. And I believe that, you know, everyone has, unless there was a gap in the market, or people felt that one group wasn't supporting the industry as best they should, unless that wasn't the thought out there, there wouldn't be a gap in the market. And I guess Ag Force wouldn't have decided to step in. But like I said, some people out there are really happy with cane growers. Some people are disillusioned and would be looking to go somewhere else. And like I said, that's completely up to the individual grower.
Look, Brendan, sorry, just to go back on our 5 billion bucket and what we could spend it on. One of our viewers has said we need to do the highways, the roads, spend a lot more money on our roads. So that would be quite a bit.
I've got a bit of a thought on the roads thing. Like I've always been, you know, we should have two lane highway each way, you know, so it's 4 lanes. And I'm at what point do you think that we won't, you know, there'll come a time where, okay, we've got drones and we've got cars that fly in the air, and that's a bit forward thinking. You know, is it 20 years? I wanted
one by now. Actually.
Yeah, it's 2020. Like you know, I've seen Back to the Future. But will there come a time where they will just go, bang, we're not going to do highways anymore because we don't need them? And is it something that, you know, I would think, like, I'm only 34. I would think in my lifetime that I'm going to see cars flying around. I think they do it in Dubai now. Someone need to check that. But you know, is it gonna be a thing of, you know, 2040 or 2050, bang, we're not doing highways anymore because we don't need them? Or is it something that, people are starting to taper off because it's like, okay, well, you know, or it's just a question that's I'm chucking out there. Is that?
It's hypothetical.
If I could start with a comment about the roads here in North Queensland and Western Queensland,
or the lack of, you mean?
Yeah, well, I had an opportunity the other day to drive all the way from Brisbane to back home to Townsville. Now, as soon as you leave Gympie, the road's buggered.
No, that's exactly right.
It's really from Gympie north, and that's not far out of Brisbane. So it'd be remiss of me to basically just say North Queensland roads are terrible. They're all terrible in Queensland. It's actually a national disgrace.
If you have a look at my picture, I'm trying to help out. I think that's from Bundy. That one.
Yeah.
Like saying cut it off from Bundy. So,
Exactly. Yeah. So as for flying cars and no need for highways in the future, well, right now we probably would have thought our airlines were going to be safe, but
anything can happen.
Right now, that road freight wouldn't be coming through.
That's right.
We have 2 airlines running. That's half the freight not coming up and down the coast every day.
And I can speak with some authority that air freight before this was terrible. It was getting tougher and tougher and tougher. And it's look, the reliability of air freight, which, out of Melbourne was meant to be overnight, and it just got tougher and tougher. And all of a sudden you didn't get it Thursday because, there was a problem with the plane. And this is before COVID. So,
well, I think there was an announcement last week, actually, a couple $1 million on the roads of strategic importance of federal and state United funding. They're going to fast track some of that, some of those projects. I think it's about 22 projects underway, but that's a drop in the ocean. You'd spend any time with any truckies who drive those roads regularly, and they'll just tell you it's not just the roads, it's the bridges. It's a whole lot of things when it comes to the freight industry. They'll tell you how bad they are in the north.
I'll tell you what, that Marlborough Strait, it's if it was that rough on the water, I wouldn't take my boat out on it. Like 15, 20 knots and you're bouncing along.
I've travelled the Gregory Development Road a couple of times, and I swear I'm like on a roller coaster. It's like the whole way for hours.
Anyone that's travelling from the Burdekin up to Townsville at the minute would see the infrastructure that's getting spent there. So that's for as long as I can remember, since probably 2000s. Like I've followed politics, when I was at school and that, so probably even back to probably 96 or 97 or whatever. They've always told us that they were going to fix the highway, and finally, it's 2020 and they're actually doing it to their credit. But the frustrating thing about it, it's been an election promise forever. We're going to fix it, we're going to fix it, we're going to fix it, and it just takes so long to actually get these projects up and running. But look, to their credit, they are doing it looks to be 4 lanes in a lot of places. They've got some huge bridges going in, across the Horton there, and I believe I think the purpose of the road is going to be so it only closes for 1 hour a year. With the rain, like when it does rain, they couldn't, like, to make it so that it didn't close ever would have cost like an extra, I don't know, 500 million or whatever. So they look at what's acceptable, and that's how they come up with the road heights that they do. So hopefully they don't dam everything and stuff all the properties around that place. But it'll be interesting to see when it's finished. I think it's good. It's still got many years to go on it, so it will be interesting.
At the start of my term, there was the project where they did the Francis Creek, Cattle Creek upgrade as you're coming into Ingham. That was just finishing, and that was a great piece of infrastructure. We've got a new project that's going to be kicking off the start next year from Veals Road to Pope Road in the northern side of Townsville. It's going to be 4 lanes pretty much from Dirrigan going through to Yabulu. So what that'll mean is a duplication of the highway there and a duplication of the bridge that goes across Black River. It'll make that area a lot safer. We had an unfortunate death last year, this year. Unfortunately, if there was a split in the highway there, you can't prevent all accidents, but if you can try and add some segregation on the highway, it does reduce a lot of them.
Yeah, huge amount.
Yeah. All right, I've got a couple more questions for you, actually, Nick. My first question is totally unrelated to roads, but oh, might not be. Who actually inspires you, Nick? Who have you been inspired by in your lifetime?
You know who inspires me, and you know I don't really talk about this too much, but my grandfather, my nunno that moved out from Italy, that's my inspiration. You know, he had a pretty tough upbringing in Italy post World War II, and then during World War II, and you know when you he never talked too much about what happened back in the old country, but when you get on you decide to get on a ship because at the age of 14, 15. You've got to, and this is in his own words, you've got to share an egg for breakfast with your brother because you don't, or it's time to do something, And those guys that immigrated to Australia and women as well, just made that decision, and their families made the decision to send their kids away or their young men away or women with the idea of a better life. That inspires me, and it gives me the reason to fight for what I'm doing right now because they came to the lucky country.
They certainly did.
It was filled with prosperity. These men and women, they worked their absolute hands to the bone and they prospered. These days, you got a mother and father working, 40 hours a week each, and they're still struggling to pay the power bill. They're still struggling to feed the kids, still struggling to get ahead. This is no longer with state governments and federal governments have worked consecutively to suck the life out of the working classes of Australia. And small business in Australia to the point where we can't, I can't sit there and do 40 hours a week and then buy a cane farm with the money that I made from doing the labourous work. That's the opportunity that those guys and women had. That's the place that I want to get ourselves back to.
Yeah, 40 hours a week, 40 hours a week for two families, for two, like for
working
a mum and dad, for
parents.
working parents, mate. That's just paying a house off. Maybe a car, and
feeding the family.
And feeding the family. That's
and struggling to pay the electricity bill, no doubt.
That's survival.
And I like a lot of the things that Scott Morrison has been able to do during this COVID-19 situation, but I would like to see the federal government step up to the plate and support the people that are actually working out there and keeping this country going right now, because there was this catchphrase that Scott Morrison used during his election campaign, and it sticks in my head. If you have a go, you'll get a go. Now, what does that mean? Like, I haven't got my go yet.
No.
Or the guy out there still flying in and out from a mine site, he's paying for his own overnight accommodation or paying for extra to get his flights out there because there's only one carrier at the moment. He's not getting a go right now. He's not paying taxes to keep everything else running at the moment. I want to see this guy step up a little bit more on that.
I could say the same with all the school teachers out there too, who have been just phenomenal in the workload. I mean, I say that because I'm in the industry, keeping it going and the extra hours and working all through the last school holiday break as well, and they're doing above and beyond to in terms of their own, how quickly they had to transfer everything to remote learning. And next week they're going back, and a lot of them in secondary school and prep and year one will be doing both models, particularly in secondary, you'll be doing remote and face-to-face, depending on, where you teach. But they're in the same boat. And there are others too. That's not the only group, the only two groups.
From small businesses to education, people in the front line, and
health industry,
all those workers. Wouldn't it be nice come tax time this year? There's a little bit of a tax rebate for those guys that had to go and then get a go.
Yeah, that's right.
100%. Like it, and to be honest, like anyone that was able to maintain that, their normal work hours, like even if it was $1,000, at tax time. It's their money. Like they've already paid the tax on it.
That's right.
And making sure they got that 1,000 back, I think it'd be a terrific idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. All right. Well, it's Mother's Day tomorrow, and I'd like to talk a bit about the family support that you get and your lovely wife, Alicia. Tell us a bit about what she does to support you and all the wonderful work that you do.
When I was still a single man, the voice of reason in my life was probably my sister, and then secondly, my mother. At my wedding, on my wedding day, that was handed over, that responsibility, to my wife. And not only does she steer me through life and making some of my tougher decisions, but she also supports me in whatever decision I end up making or direction I end up going, whether it's finishing up with the mines and deciding that I'm going to venture into a tourism-based business, whether it was hanging that hat up and, running a 3.5-week campaign and getting behind me and supporting me to step into politics. She's always there. She's the kind of person that when she gets home from work, she has a government role with the federal government in the department, and she gets home from quite a regulated sort of workspace, and she just sort of sits down with me at dinner time and goes, "What happened today, love?"
Wonderful.
It doesn't matter if I was in mining and construction or tourism or now in politics. It's a pretty full life that I'm living, and she's right there behind me to support me.
Fantastic. And how will you celebrate Mother's Day with your mother tomorrow?
Well, we'll be taking turns between my sister and her little family and my family to head up and see my mother in Ingham. We'll be visiting up there to do that. But like I said, we'll be doing shifts, so to make sure that we're keeping within the social distancing rules.
Lovely, lovely. Well, any other comments, Brendan, or questions that you might have for Nick?
No, probably the one I like to ask all people in politics is, do you enjoy it?
I never understood the term public servant until I took on this role.
Yep.
This is a public servant at the highest level. You're out there, your purest people out there in politics will take on the position that their role is to serve the community. I've learned from watching the Honourable Bob Katter, Shane Knuth, who's the member for Hill for KAP, and Robbie Katter. These guys, they don't do this job for any other reason but to serve their community. Shane Knuth's whole mantra is it's an honour to serve, and it really is. I get out there and I'm enjoying not only helping people try and get some of these bigger projects off the line, but what really kind of warms your heart day in, day out is being able to help people out there with the biggest problem in their day, where someone perhaps can't get the right health services, or their patient subsidy, travel subsidy hasn't come through, and they ask us to get involved to try and hurry that along. Or say someone out there that is having drama with their child through the education system, or there's a myriad of things that we help people through every day at the electorate office. And celebrating those little wins is what keeps me going and what really makes me enjoy what I'm doing.
You talked about Bob Katter. A lot of people probably haven't had the time to, everyone, people see him up the street, or they might, have 5 minutes, time with him. Having worked with Bob and Robbie, what's one of the things that you could describe Bob like? Because a lot of, I've been fortunate enough to spend time with him, and as Nanette has, and as you have, moving forward. But a lot of people, they call him the Mad Hatter, and they call him crazy and all that sort of stuff. From someone who works with him, give the viewers a bit of an understanding of what he's like.
I think the viewers need to realise that they're probably right in the sense he's 100% crazy. Crazy about North Queensland. He will do whatever he needs to do to get his point across the line to advocate for not only his seat of Kennedy, but advocate for all of North Queensland. Last night went back. I was actually online for some reason and checked his first speech. His first speech, he was talking about the Bradfield scheme. And it was actually, he brought it up when the Speaker of the House was actually trying to cut him off because he had spoken too long. So he's been like this. He loves talking and advocating for North Queensland since his first day in federal parliament, and before that when he was in state politics. Bob does things very differently to Robbie. Robbie's more, I would say, concise with his messaging. Robbie really knows where the nuts and bolts have got to go to actually make a project work, where Bob's brilliant at advocating. And I almost say sometimes Bob hits it with a sledgehammer to break it up, and Robbie puts it back together to and assemble it how it needs to be for not only our party, but also for getting a project over the line for Queenslanders.
One of the things that come out on social media is that, I find this quite funny that, it showed who hasn't downloaded the what federal MPs haven't downloaded the app, the COVID-19 app, and And I've been trying to tell people, they're going, oh, Bob Catter, he hasn't downloaded the app. And I said, he can't. And
He's
they said,
got a flip phone,
he's
an
got
old
a flip
Nokia.
phone. Like it's old school. Like he cannot get on the internet with his phone.
He doesn't have a smartphone.
No, he doesn't have a smartphone.
He's an old-fashioned politician. I mean, with a flip old Nokia. Remember when you had?
No, it's a Samsung, I believe.
Oh, Samsung.
A leather holster on his hip.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And I don't even think he does text message, does he?
No way.
Oh no, and he wouldn't read a text either.
Because I for him to do text message, he'd have to hit, to say hello, it'd be 555 3.
He just calls you at any time of the night. If he's got your number, expect to call at any time of the night. Bob literally does not stop. I've never seen someone at the age of
hyperactive.
He's coming up to 75, and I've just never seen a guy.
What's he now? 73?
75. Yeah.
74 was he? Yeah.
Come up to 75. I understand. I have got that wrong. I didn't go to his birthday party this year. Not that he has one. But yeah, he's just a ball of energy. And, I think a man that's been in politics for 45 years to have not lost the passion, that's commendable. He's going to die fighting on the front line. That's right.
Absolutely.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Nick. I think we've chatted for quite some time and you've shared so much, and it's really wonderful to have you on our show and for you to give us this much time and tell us your perspective of the North. I do hope that you come back sometime down the track and join us again, and perhaps on a different topic, no doubt.
That'd be lovely, Nanette and Brendan. Give us a call at any stage, but probably not too soon. I don't want to burn your viewers out just yet.
No, somewhere down the track.
In its infancy, I think even the feedback we got last week was really good. And even just looking at that, who's been online, it's been good. But yeah, no, it's good for people to get an insight into different people and different perspectives that we have around the North. It's some comments last week. How come you had someone from this side of politics? I said, it's not about sides. It's about just perspective. It's about, you might have a different point of view than me, and that's fine. Like, people need to share ideas. Talking to Jayne, she wants a different, wants different levels of government. I can't disagree with it. As much as I support what we currently have, how that would look also would work, but I also think that we need more states, whether you agree or not, it's not a bad thing to disagree. It's just a different point. So
yeah, no, I think it's very healthy to have those sorts of communications and debates, and to bring all different types into the room. Factionism gets us nowhere. Taking sides gets us nowhere. We need to listen, and through that listening, we can grow. Thank you very much, Nick. It's just wonderful to have you on board.
That'd be great to have more independents and more minor party people controlling the Queensland Parliament. Because at the moment, debate is dead. Debate is dead.
Well, just before we do go, that I had someone the other day, good friend. He rung up and he said, and this is his position. I'm not disagreeing with it, but he said we've got to get the minor parties all together. He said, can you make that happen? I said, I think it's a bit bigger than me. I said, but he said, we're doomed. He said, the two major parties, we need to kick them to the curb and get the One Nations, the Catters, the North Queensland First, and join them all together and just, go as one.
On the viable third party.
I said, I can't disagree with what you're saying. Will it happen? I'm not sure. I think until people from North Queensland control state parliament, I don't think we'll get ahead. That's my honest opinion. And how we do it, whether it's the coming together of those parties and making sure that we get a better voice or a bigger voice or a block of vote that actually controls the parliament. It's going to be a bumpy road ahead for us, I think.
Absolutely. We don't have the political punch, but, Nick, a lot of people have been hanging on this idea that if the KAP or whomever gets the balance of power in the next state government, that would mean good outcomes or even better outcomes for the North. Tell us a bit more about that potential. Obviously a lot of things have to fall your way or the way of those who are wanting that, but tell us a bit more about what you think on that while we're here.
You know, one of the criticisms we get usually from the LNP, and you know, when they campaign against us, they sort of say things like, "I don't vote for the KAP; they'll never be able to hold the balance of power or hold a powerful position in Parliament, or they'll never be able to form government." And I just have to look at the last 20 years. Now, the KAP actually were in a hung Parliament just as long as the LNP has been in government in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
So you've got more chance, or just as much chance, as the KAP having a balance of power situation as the LNP actually holding government in their own right. So that's one thing to consider for that.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
But then you have a look when, you know, we didn't have the balance of power in the last Parliament when the Labor Party did have the numbers with once they pulled the Speaker across. But once Billy Gordon left the Labor Party or was kicked out, that turned the Parliament into a hung Parliament. Yeah. Now, what happened there was they were able to have proper negotiation with the crossbench and get legislation through the House from both sides. So if the LNP could convince the crossbench and Billy Gordon to vote on something, it'd work. Or if the KAP could, just like what happened in the sugar marketing legislation and the ethanol mandate that the KAP were able to push through. Now, they were able to convince Billy Gordon and the LNP to support us, or Robbie and Shane Knuth, to put that through and fight the Labor Party. But then when the Labor Party had stuff and good policy to push through, they were able to convince the crossbench to come along. So all of a sudden, the function of Parliament works better when the crossbench holds the balance of power. Right now, whether it's at federal or state level, as soon as you have a government that has the power and the seats to govern in their own right, they just put it on cruise control and just through doing just enough to get themselves re-elected. And that's not healthy for anybody.
No, absolutely. Totally agree. And that's the power of minor parties in government, and we need them.
Yep, definitely.
All right. Okay, well, thank you very much, Nick. And you enjoy your weekend, and certainly enjoy your Mother's Day. I'll see you again.
One of the most enjoyable parts of it. Thank you very much.
All right. See you, mate. See you, Nick. See you later. Bye-bye. Bye.
Talk to you soon, mate.
Bye.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Some good insight there from Nick. Yeah, it's people probably don't realise how hard some politicians work. You know, having walked with Nick and seen the effort that he puts in, and the likes of Robbie and Shane and Bob, you know, there's a fair bit of effort that goes into them, and you know, that's not taking away from people, from other politicians. I know.
No, that's right.
Seeing the likes of Costo, that, you know, the effort that he puts in, you know, it's unbelievable. The effort that, you know, select politicians do. Stephen Andrews is another one. You know, they get around, and you know, it's good to see, you know, that Nick sort of reiterate that whole public servant thing. You know, it's not just a walk in the park. You know, when some people see how much they get paid, they do get frustrated, thinking, oh, you know, it's just, you know, money for jam. But the amount of hours that they do put in can be crazy. And you know, for the good ones, you've got to take your hat off to them and say, you know, good on you.
Yeah, no, he's definitely a very hardworking politician, and whether you align with KAP policy or not, he's definitely a good man and works really, really hard. I mean, we're fortunate because, you know, I particularly live in his electorate and see what he does, and I've been following for a long time. In fact, I first started looking at Nick when he actually ran as a candidate in the last state election. I became familiar with his work that he was doing with tourism, and I remember him making this fabulous video about Townsville, and I saw it on Facebook, and I thought, oh, I've got to friend this guy, because he obviously loves the, you know, Townsville and surrounds. It was a promotional video for his business, and I just thought, that's so positive, and more of what we need is a really highlighting of the potential and positives in the area. And then that's what hooked me in and got me interested in what, you know, he was. And before I knew it, you know, 3.5-week campaign, and he's a member of Parliament. It was unbelievable. Some people actually call it, you know, a bit like a Bradbury moment, but I think it's actually even better than that, because, you know, obviously the climate was right, and he was the right person, and he obviously, you know, has done a brilliant job, you know, what he does in his role, and we see it. But like you said, there are other politicians from all sides that are very hardworking, you know, and I'm sure that if, you know, we will get them on our show down the track and they can tell you, give you us a bit of an insight, viewers, and you and I a bit of an insight to the, you know, the hard yakka involved in the political arena, and it's not always fun and games, that's for sure, and lots of challenges. And I take my hat off to the Central North Queensland politicians, those 17. You know, can you imagine? I mean, it doesn't really matter which political party you're in, you know, fighting for the North, and, you know, yeah, you know, if you don't have an understanding of life in this neck of the woods, and what it's like. I mean, I grew up and, you know, lived my life in regional areas and grew up in the North. You know, if you don't have an understanding, you know, it is different. Life is different here, and it's distance is a big thing, you know, but there are other things. There are attitudinal and cultural things as well. Yeah. And, you know, there's so many good people, and a lot of people tolerate too, believe it or not. There's a real level of tolerance, because, you know, life hasn't always been easy for those in Central North Queensland historically, in the current and in past generations. And Nick alluded to that when he talked about his nonna, and I can allude to that because one side of my family were post-World War II immigrant. My father was a post-World War II immigrant child from Germany. So, you know, like, you know, life is different, and, you know, our politicians, many of them work very hard, and the ones that don't, well, let's hope that the people that put them in, vote with their feet and vote them out, because if you don't work hard, you don't deserve to be there, frankly.
100%.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Brendan.
No, okay. No worries, Nat. Enjoy tomorrow. Obviously, you know, big shout out to all the mothers out there. Happy Mother's Day for tomorrow. I know, you know, it's interesting, and you know, when people talk about gender equality, I always shake my head and I say, why do women want gender equality? I think women should be held in a higher regard. I don't see why they should be brought down to a man. You know, you know, the effort that, you know, you'd have to say 99% of the mothers put into their children. You know, you've got to take your hat off to them. And so I guess tomorrow is an opportunity for everyone to you know, that one day to thank them and make sure that you do spoil them. I know that, you know, we're going to obviously do a bit of a barbecue here for my mother and for my wife. So, you know, for everyone else out there, make sure that you do
spoil the mums.
Yeah,
and if you don't have your mum with you, then remember your mum and remember how they helped shape who you are.
Yeah, definitely.
They certainly do.
I know a few people who just recently have lost mothers. And I do send my condolences out to them. You know, there's some sad times here in the Burdekin with some well-known mothers who have just passed away. So I'll be, you know, I know myself and many others will be thinking about those people that,
that's right.
you know, won't get to spend tomorrow with their mothers. So, you know, don't want to finish on a sad note, but make sure tomorrow is something where
a special day for everyone.
Yeah, a special day for everyone.
Yeah. All right. Wonderful. Have a great weekend, people. We'll see you next week or week 3.
Thanks for tuning in.
Hang on, I'll just play our little song. Well, sorry, I love this song.
See you guys.
All right. Bye-bye. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
See you later. Bye.